Welcome to Uncharted. I'm your host, Captain Kelly, and with me today is Captain Hugo Ortega, of which some of you may know from the super successful and widely known Superyacht Sunday school. Captain Hugo has become such an inspiration for many in the industry and many outside of the industry as well that are looking to simply learn more about it and to join it. Ironically, Hugo and I share similar backgrounds in that we both didn't grow up around boats and we really knew nothing about them. But the cool thing is, we were each fortunate enough to run into someone that wanted to share their passion of yachting with us. Captain Hugo has also struggled with severe depression, though, and that's much like myself, but he has put the work in and made the life changes to get to where he is today. So I hope you enjoy as Captain Hugo shares his uncharted path to today, where he is happy, kicking ass in yachting and in life.
Thanks for that introduction, Kelly. Happy to be here. This is really, really great. And I'm excited to talk a little bit more about everything you spoke about.
Super to have you. So tell me, I was learning more about you before the podcast, and I found it interesting to know that you've grown up as an immigrant. So tell me about that. Are you the immigrant? Your parents the immigrant? Where did you come from? You mentioned the Bronx, growing up in the Bronx. I mean, how did you guys land there? So tell me that. I'm always just super interested to learn about people when they've grown up as an immigrant.
Well, you've certainly done your homework on me, but yes, I was originally born in New York, so I'm first-generation American, but both of my parents immigrated to the U.S. at different points in their life, and they met in New York, and that just happened to be where they got married. They had me there. I was growing up in the Bronx at the beginning, and then, in search of a better life, which is why all immigrants come to the U.S., they decided it was better for our family in Florida, and we moved out of there. So I lived there about the first 10 years of my life, so New York City is a little bit home, but now at 32, I guess I've spent a majority of my time in Florida, I'd say. So I'm more Floridian than New Yorker at this point.
So where did they immigrate from?
So my mother's from Dominican Republic, and she moved when she was about 18. She's the youngest of five. Her whole family slowly came to the U.S., first the grandparents, and then, they went through the process for all of their kids. And then my dad's originally from Honduras, and when he was about 18, he immigrated to the U.S. as well. And first he started down in Houston in Texas, and then he moved over to New Jersey, and then ultimately New York. And that's where he met my mother.
Oh, wow. That's such an interesting background. And I think I kind of chuckled to myself when I learned that you didn't know anything about boating either, because I think there's a little bit of a, I don't know, in a way, a misnomer that us captains have just, grown up driving boats since we were in our diapers. And you and I definitely haven't. And we didn't, at least for myself, I didn't know, bow from stern or port from starboard. And so it's kind of cool to know that, you got into the industry not knowing much about it. How did you get in?
So you're right. I didn't grow up around boating, especially in New York. I mean, some people in Manhattan, I suppose, were around boats, but I mean, it just being an island there. But I didn't know anything about boating. When I moved down to Florida, again, I was in Orlando, which is landlocked. So, I was more familiar with some boats than, going on a lake, some friends having a boat, but I never had that opportunity just because, as a family, we didn't have the funds for that. And that was just, It wasn't even on my radar. And, later on I pursued engineering in school. And, by all means, I was going down that professional route, white collar job. And I wasn't expecting to do anything regarding boating. And it wasn't until I was backpacking later on. I used to work in oil and gas, and there was a huge downturn in the industry, and I lost my job. And I'm sure we'll get into that later. That led to, a lot of the depression and the negative feelings and realization of what was going on in my life. But later on, when I was backpacking and traveling, that's when I met my first yachty. I was in Southeast Asia, and I met a South African yachty that later became more well-known on Below Deck. But he, like you said, he mentored me. He taught me about his job. And at first, still, even then, it was just something that was, it was interesting. It was a cool story. But I was still trying to figure out, what am I going to do? What's my job going to be when I get back home? And it wasn't until it kind of just kept hitting me in the face, well, maybe I can keep traveling and doing that job too. And, slowly I kind of started to believe, well, maybe I can. He's saying that you can do it even if you don't have experience. He didn't have experience. And I think we all probably have that similar realization where we just decide, okay, I'm going to go ahead and dive in. And ultimately that blossomed into my yachting career.
Oh, that's awesome. You kind of went there, and I want to go ahead and go there. You know, you talked about how you wound up in a state of depression, and from what I gather, it was a pretty hard hit. And one of the things that I'm wanting to do with my podcast and with my socials and everything is to let people know that you're not alone. That a lot of us have been there. A lot of us have been into the dumps, but if you put the work in, you can get yourself out and live your best life. So tell us a little bit about how you got there, and maybe even more importantly, what you did to get out of that depression.
Perfect. So for me, I think it was a combination of things. So, firstly, I was going through university. Like I said, I studied engineering. It was something I was good at. And I was always kind of trying to do what my parents had said, which is have, a better set of opportunities than they did. Them being immigrants. And again, it's very common to, to labor off the sweat of your brow, make your money, etc. They were always like, go to school, study, don't be in the situation like us, have a better life, etc. So, I kind of pursued that and I went that route. And it came time at the end that I was really getting disenfranchised with what I was studying. But I was like, well, let me just power through. Let me finish this degree. And, once I get to my life, then it's going to be all good. So I got a job. I moved over to Houston, Texas, which was really difficult leaving my family behind. But, I embarked on that
Mhm.
part of my life. And it was a slow realization that I really didn't like the job that I had, that I'd worked so hard to get. I was really far from my family. So I was feeling, really alone.
Mhm.
At the same time, I had a relationship that was about 7 years in length, that we were starting to realize that we weren't compatible. We didn't have things. I mean, it's not that we weren't compatible. It's that we wanted different things out of life. I knew I wanted to
Mhm.
travel. I wanted to work abroad. I wanted to do a few things, and it just wasn't lining up. So we ended up splitting, and again, breaking a relationship and habits that had formed over such a long period. And at that point, the only person that was close to me, then splitting from that and being alone again. Then at the same time, I was also just working really long hours at my corporate job. Like I said, I didn't like it. I was probably putting in like somewhere between 60 and 70 hours a week. I was gaining a
What
lot of
age?
weight.
How old were you?
At
How old
this
were you,
point,
if you don't mind me asking?
yeah, at this point, I'm 22. So I'm 22 working in Houston oil and gas at the time.
See, and that's something I want to point out. The 20s are a bitch. At least they were for me. I mean, my 20s were hard. And it's like I have such a soft spot for the 20s, that age group, which is the majority of what yachties are, because you've got people coming at you, you got your parents coming at you, you got your friends coming at you saying, what are you going to be when you grow up? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? How are you supposed to have the next 80 years of your life planned out when you're only 20 years old? And I
Yeah.
think that's I don't know what the word that I'm looking for is, but that's just not a real we shouldn't be putting that kind of pressure on 20 somethings. We shouldn't be putting that kind of pressure, I think, as a society on them to have it all figured out and to get the job, and then to push them into that very traditional way of life. You go to college, get a job, you get married, you have babies, and then you're supposed to like have the whole next 80 years figured out, and that's a lot. I mean, your brain isn't even fully developed until you're 25, I think. I mean, so how are you supposed to figure all this out in your 20s? So do you think the pressure that society puts on us in our 20s is part of maybe why you got so depressed? I know it was for me.
Yeah, I definitely think you're hitting the nail on the head, and maybe I can't speak for all cultures, but definitely that pressure here in America. Go to college,
Okay.
graduate, buy that house, get married, get the dog, get the kids shortly after. Like all of that was definitely weighing on me, and even though I had a really successful job, and like I said, I had moved away, I had done some stuff. Like at the back of my head, especially once my relationship fell through and a lot of things happened, I was like, am I a failure? Like my parents wanted me to do this so
Mhm.
hard. I really hate what I'm doing. I mean, a lot of my peers are getting married or like, buying houses. Is that what I'm supposed to do? And then, just feeling like you're coming up short, but also that I felt like I didn't even know if that was what I wanted. I was just kind of working on autopilot. And I felt like that was the first time I realized, like, wait, let's hold on a minute. Like, I don't think I like this ride, right? Like, I want to
Mhm.
get off. And I think I just felt like really not, I don't want to say deceived, but that's the only word that's coming to me. Like I thought that when you got to that point, and if you'd done everything right, like I guess I just figured, oh, you're just gonna by nature be happy, right? You have everything that you need. And I just really realized that I didn't like where my life was. I didn't necessarily regret my decisions, but I didn't know how to get out of the situation I was in, and I didn't even know what other opportunities there were. I'd already graduated high school or college, so it's like I'm not going to go back for another degree, but I don't like this. What do I do? Like, is there another way? How can I travel? At the same time, I really wanted to travel, but in the States too, it's really strongly pushed that once you graduate, you start working. In other cultures in Europe, it's common to go backpack the world, go figure it out. Like, oh,
Yeah.
are you going to college? Like, don't worry about it. It'll be there later. And I just felt like I had really missed out on that finding yourself portion, or for lack of a better word, just figuring out what you want to be when you grow up.
But I think again, going back to putting so much pressure, how are you supposed to know that at 20? That's hard, And then, you brought up regret. And I try to live my life without regrets, because if I had any regrets, or if I said, well, if I had a chance to do it over again, I would have changed X, Y, and Z. No, I wouldn't, because you need those moments to learn. You need those moments to grow. They may suck at the time, and they might be hard as hell to get through, and you might feel like this is the end of the world, but coming out on the other side of it now and being 42 and being the happiest I've ever been, I'm like, no, you need those moments, and the things that you're going through, that you were going through in your 20s and that I was going through in my 20s. Same thing for me. I had been in a relationship for 5 years in this whole tiny little town that I grew up in, had it planned out. We were going to get married. We were going to have kids. And then I was like, oh, wait, whoa, what? Like, everybody was planning everything for me. Is this really where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing? And I just think it's so important for young people to realize you don't need to put so much pressure on yourself, and you'll figure it out. And it's okay, even if you change careers and reinvent yourself 10 times over in your 80 years of life,
Yeah, 100%. Giving yourself that lenience is super, super important because, I mean, even going to college, you always heard, oh, people change their majors, 90% of the time or whatever. So I was aware that people do change their life. And, I'd met people that were older, and it's like, oh, when I was young, I used to work in this. But I guess there's always that stigma that, not that you're a failure, but that if you're doing late career changes, you're kind of behind the game, right? Like the people that are most successful kind of start at the beginning and they know what they want. And
that
I don't know.
comparison trap.
Yeah,
that,
you just
that
get caught.
comparison.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I it's just that pressure's crazy.
Did you find that and I mean, look, we're humans. We're gonna get, there's a level of comparison. There's a healthy level of comparison that keeps us motivated and keeps us driven. But did you find that you had to talk to yourself and teach yourself that to find that level to say, I don't have to be here, and this is my life, this is my path, this is my journey, and everybody's is going to look different. Did you find that you had to figure out how to tell yourself it's okay to be where I'm at? This is my journey, not somebody else's.
Yeah, I definitely think, especially by the time I was doing and starting and deciding that I was going to do yachting, I definitely think I was there. But it was a long journey. It's hard, and I guess even in Hispanic culture, it's really common to get married early. It's really common to,
And you have families. You have big families. That's part of
Yeah.
So what did you do? You got into this depression. How dark was it, and how did you get out of it?
So it was pretty bleak, and then I got moved over. Like, my job moved me to Oklahoma City on top of that after that. So not only was I now single, not knowing what the hell I was going to do with my life, I went through a period where I was staying with different friends and like living on their couches, which that was also weird, just being a professional and being at that part of my life, but then feeling like I had completely regressed into being almost like I was in college again, right? Like I had like a suitcase with me, and I really did feel just like a failure. Like I had moved back and I regressed, and I didn't really know how to even approach that conversation with my family. Like I didn't tell them really any of that until much, much later, like 6 months later. Oh, by the way, we broke up and this is what happened and everything. So I was feeling really alone. I got moved over to another city, this one, which is in the complete middle of nowhere. Like if you think Texas is far away from everything, like Oklahoma is not it. and it was winter. It was snowing. Like I really felt alone, and thankfully, like it never went extremely dark as in like self-harm or anything like that, but I just felt really, really lost and I didn't know what to do. I was gaining a lot of weight, whether it was just stress eating, lack of habits. It felt like everything was crumbling and I really didn't know what to do. And at the time, luckily I had a coworker and he was a really close friend as well that also got moved to that area. And I actually should have the conversation with him. If he planted the seed that I should start going to the gym. He got really into the gym. He was getting really, really fit. And he was like, hey, you should start coming with me. And he kind of was really relentless about it. And I don't know if it's because he had noticed that I'd gained a lot of weight and maybe that I had nothing really going on. But anyway, I started going with him and getting into a routine and actually getting physical, getting the dopamine rush, moving your body. That actually did start immediately. Like I was feeling better, like carrying myself, working. I still hated what I was doing. But like I said, it kind of gave me like a jump start, like a candle was lit. And then I got really, really obsessed with that. I'm kind of a person that goes into the extremes. Like when I do something, I really do
Me
it.
too.
And I didn't have anything else really to do. So I really got into that. And then he had like a really good, close group of friends that he had formed there in Oklahoma City. And, then he started bringing me around that. So now I suddenly had the network of like 3 or 4 other people that I could hang out with and that were similar minded and stuff. And he kind of just, I don't know, he kind of helped give me like a little family feel and actually just give me a purpose, even though it was just like working out and that now I had people that I could talk to and that, I trusted or whatever. That kind of helped me start thinking and like getting excited about life again. And that's when then I started planning, they kind of told me, hey, like, what do you like to do? And I told them I like to travel. And, I had been in this relationship for so long, I hadn't really realized that I'd given up the opportunity to do a lot of traveling because we were always going to see her family. And then, I was visiting my family for holidays and they were like, you should use your vacation and go somewhere. And they kind of put that idea in my head. And I was like, holy shit, I hadn't actually thought of that. And one of them was like a really big backpacker. And she gave me a ton of tips and was like, oh, look, I'll help you pick a backpack. I'll help you do this. I'll help you do that. And anyway, I ended up planning this 1-month trip. I put all my holiday together. I did it over the Christmas break. And like that trip, like re-energized me with life. Like I was like, holy shit, like I this is what I want to do. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do. I still don't know how I'm going to make money, but I want to do this. Like this is what actually makes me feel alive. This is what makes me feel comfortable. Like this is what I was missing. It felt like everything was in black and white the last 6 to 8 months, and suddenly I was seeing in color. And again after that, I came back to work, and then my brain was rushing. Like I was like, okay, how do I do that? How can I transition out of this? Like I know I want to leave this career. Like it just things that I hadn't even thought about. Like obviously I hated my job. I needed to leave it. Like obviously I didn't like my life. I needed to leave it, but it wasn't until, like I said, I had a strong group of friends that were like taking care of me, and I actually started taking care of myself and exercising. And anyway, like that just let my brain then go to the next level of like, okay, how am I going to solve this rather than how am I just going to spiral and stay in this like negative space?
What about the conversations that you had with yourself? Because I say all the time, the conversations that we have with ourselves in our own head are the most important conversations that you'll ever have. So while you had a good group of friends, how much self-talk was going on? How much encouraging your own self that you were enough, that you were enough, that you could be okay and you could come out of this. So what were the conversations like with Hugo in your own head?
Are you asking from before versus after, or
As you were
like
getting better, what kinds of conversations did you have? What I
right?
want people to understand is you have to be your own biggest cheerleader, because as much as you had a great group of friends, you have to be there for you first. And I always say this, if you wouldn't say that to your best friend, don't say it to yourself. So how did you encourage yourself to keep going and to come out of this and to get better?
Yeah, so at the beginning when everything was pretty bleak, it was pretty much just I didn't even notice it at the time, and I didn't notice so much later. It was all pretty much just negative speak, right? Like, how am I gonna get through this? Like, what am I gonna do? Like, can I even do this? Like, is this what my life's gonna be? It was all very defeatist, and there was really no solutions or anything encouraging coming out of that environment. And once I started getting better and seeing, like, let's go back to the instance of, exercising and feeling like positive about how I looked on the outside, then I was able to, start encouraging myself from the inside as well, like setting goals for myself, like, oh, you can do this, like, you're doing so well, like, when I set a lot of goals, especially weight wise at the time, and hitting all of those, and would encourage me to keep going. Like, oh, this is great. Like, look how much you've done. Like, I'm very much being an engineer, like a statistician, like, and
Oh
seeing like
yeah.
I was tracking it in the apps and seeing like how much progress I had made. Oh, this many pounds lost, and tracking all these kind of data. That was super, super exciting. Like, I felt really proud of myself for the first time in a while after thinking, why did I bother doing this degree? Why did I bother moving here? Like, after all these thoughts, I was finally starting to talk to myself and be like, you're doing such a good job. This is awesome. Like, you're moving ahead. You're improving yourself. And then I started applying that towards work, right? Like, now how can what can we do to get better at our job too? Like, where do we want to go? What do we want to do? Like, and just encouraging myself, like you said, like being a cheerleader, like, you can do this. Look how far you've come. Like, it's not that hard. It's not that bad. Let's just make a plan to move forward, and setting goals and being able to move forward was the best way for me. Like, and like I said, seeing results and being able to finally actually see encouragement and not just go, oh, like, oh, what am I doing? Like, where am I going to go? What am I going to do after this? It was really, really encouraging.
So that's awesome. So along the way, you had to have run into somebody that said, hey, come on, the yachting industry's kick ass. Like, let's do this. When did that happen?
Right. So now, fast forwarding a little bit. So I went through that first trip. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with traveling. And I was like, okay, this is really cool. I'd love to have a job where I travel. But again, at the time, I was still at my old job. But, I was re-energized. It's like, I can do this. I'm going to find a way to do it. I started doing a lot of research. Anyway, fast forward, I lose my job. And at that time, that was probably something that could have relapsed me or made me feel really negatively. But I was on this really positive kick. I knew where I wanted to go. I knew what I wanted to do. So it's like, I'm just going to buy a one-way flight, go to Asia, figure it out. Like, I'm going to go see the world. I have enough money. I've got severance. I sold my car. I was like, this is no problem. While I was traveling in Myanmar, I was just at a hostel, and I met a South African guy who at the time turned out to be a yachty. He was heading to the same place as I was. And we kind of just hit it off. And I was like, well, okay, I'm going there tomorrow. Let's catch the same bus. And then we just started traveling together for 3 months. And at the time, when you're on like a 1-year holiday, you haven't seen your family. Everyone is really just a passerby. Like, you encounter someone for a few minutes, a day, cool. But anyway, he just kept telling stories of yachting, and it kept sounding so, so exciting. And I was like, all I know I want to do is travel. Maybe I could do that. But again, like I told you, it took a lot of time for me to finally kind of put that together, because I didn't know anything about boating. And even though this guy's saying that you don't need to, at the same time, I couldn't see myself doing it. And what I joke about is we kept going to more and more like bars and hostels, and everyone loved his job. Like, when everyone said, hey, what do you do for work? Oh, I'm a deckhand on a super yacht. I travel the world. Everyone's got questions. Everyone wants to know more. And they're like, oh, what do you do? And I felt like that other piece. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm an engineer. And it's like, all right, conversation's done. Like, oh, what about yachting again? and I was like, shit, like, I want my life to be cool. And I want excitement. I want adventure. And like, that's what he's got. And like, I was like, this is my sign, just like someone was there before to tell me like, hey, like, get serious about fitness. You can change your life. You can feel better about yourself, whatever. Now here there's someone saying pretty much the same, but for work, right? Like, oh, you want to have a better job. You want to enjoy your life. Like, come do this. So it's like, I'm going to go try that. So I got him to give me as much information as he could. I met more and more yachties on that trip too. I think by the time I left Asia, I probably met like 10 or 15 of his friends. So then I felt like, okay, I've got a starting network. I know how to make a CV. I know what I need to say. I've got people that I can ask questions to. Like, why not? Let's go do it.
So fast forward a lot. You're now a captain, and like, now everybody knows you. Everybody knows Superyacht Sunday School. Like, tell me about this. Like, why did you choose to start Superyacht Sunday School, and just how awesome is this for the people that want to get into this industry, and to have, you're just such an inspiration, and you're so kind and so generous, and willing to share the information to help other people that want to be a part of this awesome freaking industry. Tell me about Superyacht Sunday School.
Sure. So I think it's really common for yachties. We all always talk about like, how great would it be if there's a page or a thing that explains everything you need to do, or oh, someone should make that. Like, we should make it easier for the next group. But then, we start climbing, getting licenses. Some of us get out of the industry. And then, it's kind of a conversation that's always like would be nice. Or at least I felt like I was having those conversations a lot. And I know for yourself, probably in yachting, you've probably had countless people ask you like, oh, how do I do what you do?
Oh my God.
Right.
All the time. All the time.
Yeah. And you start copying and pasting the message from last time. And then eventually you start getting tired. You're like, man, I do this all the time and no one ever does it. And that's kind of how the guy who got me in, Wes, I think that's how he felt. He's probably told hundreds of people about how to get into yachting. And I'm probably one of the only ones that actually took him up on that. So anyway, fast forward, during COVID, I saw that everyone was working from home, right? I was on a boat at the time. I was first officer on a boat that was in the Fed shipyard. It was really cold. It was dark. Like I said, it was during COVID. We couldn't really do anything. I was like, man, everyone gets to work from home now. And before, we've been working from home on yachts, which is awesome, right? Like, we have no commute. It's super cool. It's convenient. All our friends are there. But I was like, but now you can actually do it from your house. And it's like any job can do it. And I was like, maybe it'd be cool to balance something. Because at the time, I was like, maybe I can get rotation and do like something remotely that's making money. I don't want to go to an office, but like maybe it's something that I can keep warmed up while I'm on yachts, etc. My brain was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So I just started thinking of a lot of things. I started doing a lot of research on side hustles. I was looking at like drop shipping, all kinds of stuff. I was like, what can I do just to keep me busy in the off time? Or, how can I future proof this in case I want to, go have a family? I was just, thinking about million miles a minute because I had so much time and, I was just in a dreary shipyard. But anyway, I fell onto the idea of maybe finally starting that page that business that I'd always talked about, information products and courses and, using your knowledge to help guide someone else and help make their journey either cheaper, faster, funner, whatever the case is something that's really common. And I thought, man, I just saw an opportunity for that in yachting. And I felt like because I was such an unlikely candidate for yachting, like I had never been on boats really. I just didn't have that background and I never saw myself doing it. I was like, I think I kind of could resonate more than ever with someone that's in that shoes, right? It's not, oh, I've been on Florida boats all my life. I'm a huge fisherman or anything. It's like, no, I'm just like you. I maybe you work corporate. Maybe you're just a tradesman. Maybe you just never imagined yourself being here. I was like, I think I can do that. So I started putting that all information together and just starting that Instagram page. I started making some resources, guides. I started working with a few people one-on-one. Eventually that evolved into me putting together like a prototype for a course and having like a little boot camp that I did with students. And then fast forward to today where, I've got like obviously the Instagram page, the following, and then I've also got like a one-on-one kind of like group mentoring that I do. So if anyone wants to get into the industry, it's like a full-fledged course where I walk you through everything. I give you all the support. We're like regularly meeting. There's monthly Q&As and it's really like a complete handhold. Like if you have any questions about yachting or you're ever like, oh, does this sound fine? Like, they have me at their fingertips and it's working really, really well.
That's awesome. What a way to give back. I think sometimes people are maybe afraid to share information or afraid if they help the next one come up that their job is then going to become obsolete, but that's not the case at all. And I love the spirit of wanting to give back, help people move forward, help people that like myself. I grew up in the middle of a cornfield in Indiana.
Right.
The biggest body of water close to us is a little stream trickling through the backyard. We grew up on canoes and like 16-foot fishing skis is like the biggest boat, you're going to be on. So I didn't know anything about it. And so I always chuckle when people tell me they want to get started in the industry, but they're like, oh, I didn't grow up boating. And I was like, yeah, me neither. I grew up driving tractors, so that like you're such an inspiration though, because you show them, just you embody that yourself, just the fact that you didn't grow up anywhere around it, and you're doing it. But now you've built this course that it's like, here, I will help you. Like you say, I will hold your hand all the way through this. So what's next for Superyacht Sunday School then?
So
I know you've got to have something. I know you got to have something cooking back there. Like, I know you're not just done here. So I want to know what's next for you.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much to do and there's so much I'm doing. So I'm always improving the course and making it obviously better and better, adding more resources, making it better and easier and smoother and just easier for people that are getting into the industry. But at the same time, I also want to grow that community into, people that are already in the industry, whether it's, continued support with your CV and things like that, but also just career planning. Like I know, especially for me on deck, and well, yourself too, I'm sure. There's so many questions you have about one, what the hell are the courses that we're
Oh
looking at?
dear
Like,
God.
what order should I do them in? When should I do them? How do I fill out any of this
Yes.
paperwork? And it's a complete question mark. And I don't know about yourself, but luckily at certain times in my career, I had really good mentors and officers that were like, hey, let's, this is how you need to do things. This is when you should be
Mhm.
doing them. Come up to the bridge. Let me show you passage planning. Let me teach you this. But there's a lot of people in the industry that don't have, they're not fortunate enough to have someone willing to take them under their wing. Like, there's so many people that are sitting there, they want to improve, but they don't know how, right? Like, and then at the beginning, it's so overwhelming because you start
It's
Googling
scary.
things. Yeah. So you
It's
kind of just,
scary.
yeah. So you have analysis paralysis and you just stay there. So I want to migrate and continue to improve into like the crew sector. So people that want to be a captain someday or people that want to be an officer can get that guidance and help on how to get there. But not only that, they can be part of a community of other people that are willing and desiring to do that. Because one of the coolest things about my course isn't just that it's not that it's information. I mean, the transformation is what you're looking for, but also there's just people can post right now, oh, I just got my first interview. This is for this boat, blah, blah, blah. And people are instantly, oh my God, that's amazing. Like you got this. And it's a really great and positive community. And I know if I can incorporate that feeling with existing crew and start connecting people and both giving them what they need, but just letting them connect is one of the things I really want to do. Because the industry, I feel like at times is really fragmented. You might know some people, you might be part of some Facebook groups, but it's hard to get word across great distances and it's hard to talk to a lot of people at once. And we all fall victim of sometimes just feeling like we're floating on this boat and we're not really connected to a greater industry
Mhm.
because we're doing our charters, we're, in these little pockets of the world and we just don't have much contact with other people. So I want to connect people both to where they want to go, but just to other crew. And that's what I'm working on building and working on improving right now.
Well, Hugo, you've done an amazing job of connecting people and inspiring people and continuing to do so. Like I'm so excited to see where Superyacht Sunday School is, 6 months from now, but a year from now, 5 years from now. I can only imagine what it's going to be like. And no, just you're super cool. I
Thank you.
admire you. You're so inspirational, and I I I thank you so much for your time. And we could go on and on and on talking because I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm like, oh my God, he went through this and went through that. And I did too. And I'm just like, oh my God, I think this is, this guy's my brother from another mother. So, but no, seriously, I want to thank you for being so open and honest and sharing your story, your uncharted path to where you are now in life. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. And thanks for all the kind words. It's really, really encouraging. I'm really, really happy that people are really resonating with what I'm posting, what I'm saying. I've gotten a lot of feedback from crew, and that's really, really great. Because one of the things I was really scared of is, what if I launch this and it's crickets, but even worse, like what if I launch this and, it's complete backlash and people are like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you doing this? So words like this is really, really encouraging because in the same way, now I'm chartering this new course where sometimes you feel alone and you're trying to figure out how to find your voice and everything. And it's really, really great to hear that it's resonating with people. So thank you for all of that. That's great.
You're making a difference. You really are. So keep doing it, man.
Thanks. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I keep following all of your content too. You're training and teaching so much to people too. So it's just great to see people also wanting to teach. Because like you said, teaching the next generation is so important because a lot of people are scared to share information because, oh, they're going to take our jobs or I don't know, a billion other things. So thank you also for creating content and teaching
Aw.
people about your journey.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening. This is myself, your host, Captain Kelly of Uncharted with Captain Hugo of Superyacht Sunday School.